The Denver Nuggets, a team with the best or the second best player in the entire world at basketball, having competed for 7 games with who would be the eventual champions in the OKC Thunder, going out and realizing that this team can still really push for a championship. The Denver Nuggets have pushed all their chips in, trading Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson, re-signing Bruce Brown, a vet from their championship run, and bringing on guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. for 1 year. This team has pushed in all their chips. But today we have to ask, once they made this push, how good is this team really? Are they true contenders, or are they destined for another second round exit? And when we talk about the new look Denver Nuggets, I think the biggest piece you have to talk about, aside obviously from Nikola Jokic, is Cameron Johnson, who was traded for MPJ, and now this team has a new lineup / identity, more so in the fact of you have a legit 3-and-D guy. Now, obviously, I would argue, I know Michael Porter Jr. played horribly in the playoffs. I would argue that shoulder injury, I think, severely just messed up his performance. But the defensive capabilities of Cameron Johnson, I would say, significantly exceed those of Michael Porter Jr., and I think that this team now is starting to look towards more of those 3-and-Ds, when you're looking at this Nuggets lineup. Because the biggest problem in the playoffs at times with this team was that they really only had one or the other. And what I mean by that is it would either be you would have a lineup where you're accentuating the 3-ball, or you'd have a lineup where you're emphasizing the defense, right? Because if you put Peyton Watson out there, quite frankly, offensively, Peyton Watson isn't giving you a whole lot. But defensively, he's going to make life tough for the opposing offensive player, right? Which will help a guy like Nikola Jokic, who I still believe, I'm sorry, it could be hate, whatever, routinely it has been exposed on defense. I know, but I'm still in the playoffs. He wasn't that good in the playoffs defensively. I'm sorry. He wasn't. I genuinely think Cam Johnson is a determining factor in whether or not this team can make another deep playoff push, because now you're the third option scoring wise. I would say you're basically taking over Michael Porter Jr.'s role. Now, obviously he doesn't have the same, I would argue, just, that sheer height advantage that, MPJ used to have, where he could just jump over you, and that jumper, it is what it is, right? There's nothing you can do about that. But I think what he also gives you on the other end will be significantly better. And he's quite frankly never played with a playmaker like Nikola Jokic in terms of how Jokic can generate his buckets and his assists and just the way his gravity works. I think you're going to see Cam Johnson be a determining factor. And what I mean by that is, in the playoffs, if he's struggling, I think you're going to see this Nuggets team sort of struggle along with him. If he's shooting lights out, I think this team is most likely going to make the Western Conference Finals, maybe even the Finals, but that one it depends. It depends on who they play in the West. But I think Cam Johnson is sort of what makes this team either legit deep playoff run push or another second to first round exit. And at that point, right, the Nuggets have kind of done all they can. But I think you also have to talk about their co-star. This has always been dependent on what Jamal Murray you guys get. Depending on what Jamal you get, I would argue is completely dependent on how good this team is. If you look at even the last 3 years of the playoffs, obviously that championship run is what will stand out to you on paper, aside from the bubble year, but that isn't what we're including in this sample. Just look at what Jamal does in the playoffs the last 2 seasons. You're basically hoping that Jamal can give you at least something similar to the 22-23 season, and that you can get that sort of production and replication. Because even when you look at series like the Thunder series, or, individual games like against the Clippers, Jamal will have these moments, right, where he's clicking. The problem this year was similar to Kyrie 2 years ago now, where he'll give you an incredible half, right, in the playoffs, but the other half, it's almost like he's not out there. But then you'll have a Jamal flu game, unironically, against a team like the Thunder, and then he can just come out and steal the show. If Jamal Murray averages 23 to 24 in the playoffs, this team is most likely Western Conference Finals bound, I would say. If he has another run like that again, it's most likely another 14 to 12 game run for this Nuggets team, which is good. right? And again, I mean, you have arguably the best player in the world, or in my opinion, a top 2 player in the world in Nikola Jokic. As long as you can provide competent help for him, I think that this team is more than good enough to make a run. But if Jamal isn't really showing up, I think you're kind of boned. Quite frankly, I think you are kind of on the short end of the stick, and there's not much more you can do than that. But I will say this also. I think the offensive burden on Jamal will be somewhat lessened this year overall. You've brought on Tim Hardaway Jr. for 1 year, and he can still shoot the ball. That's literally his whole thing. You've brought on a Bruce Brown. Now, Bruce Brown, I'll be fair, is very dependent on what Bruce Brown you get. The last couple of years of Bruce Brown have not been very good, quite frankly. Yeah, I know he's had his injuries, but his numbers more so just jump off the page when you look at the Denver year. He was still pretty good that immediate year after, but then he gets traded and hurt and all over the place. But if he's giving you good production, you still have guys like Christian Brown, who I think are going to progress to some degree. I think that this team is going to then help Jamal so he doesn't have as much of a burden. And you still have dudes like Aaron Gordon, by the way. I mean, Aaron Gordon's not a Giannis at the power forward. But I mean, if we look at last year's playoffs, if I'm being 100% honest to you guys, in some ways, he was their most valuable player. Just think about it. They don't win that one game in the Clipper series if Gordon doesn't get that tip in. Gordon made the huge shot in game 1 against the Thunder. Like, Aaron Gordon throughout last year's playoffs were making the huge clutch moments, and that alone is valuable. But then, of course, you got to talk about arguably the best player in basketball, Nikola Jokic. And this is going to be the shortest part because I think it's pretty obvious what we think we're going to get here from Jokic. I do believe he will have a better playoffs, but I also do think that there have been flaws shown to this, to his abilities. Now, obviously, yes, he could have used some help. I'm not denying that at all. But even when you look at how teams guarded Jokic and how, again, I believe a blueprint has started to be laid out for the playoffs against Nikola Jokic with certain teams. I don't know if this Denver Nuggets team wants to play the Minnesota Timberwolves. I really don't, because, again, they can still run a similar concept to lineup to what they did before. Now, obviously, I would say, for whatever reason, Karl Anthony Towns becomes peak Dwight Howard against Jokic for whatever reason. I don't know why. He just does. But, again, even then you could run a Randall and then Rudy come over and help. You can basically force Jokic to get extremely uncomfortable. And I think that won't change against teams like the Thunder, the Clippers, the Timberwolves. That's 3 of the top teams of the West right there. Depending on what happens with Kawhi, I guess maybe the Clippers aren't. But either way, these are top teams in the same conference where they can kind of run defensive personnel. They can shake up Jokic a little bit. Now, obviously, Jokic is still going to put up Jokic numbers. There's no doubt about it. The dude averaged 26, 13, and 8 last playoffs. But I also want to make clear, obviously, I think he's going to give you what he gives you. But the reason this Nuggets team looks so dangerous to a lot of people, and somewhat myself included, is because the offensive help looks significantly better around him. So then we get to the overall question. How good is this team really? And frankly, I think this team is a legit contender, again, in the West, in the league. Obviously, there are some teams that I would probably take to beat them. I still think Oklahoma City could defeat this team. Now, obviously, would you prefer, if you're Oklahoma City, to have gotten Cam Johnson? Yeah, of course. But I also think that, quite frankly, this team is going to be able to make Oklahoma City. Unless they run into a Boston problem where everybody just gets hurt, then obviously they're not going to beat the Nuggets. But the Clippers can still give them problems. They just did last year. Some of these teams can still give the Nuggets run, so I wouldn't book it they're guaranteed Western Conference Finals. But if you told me, Emster, they made the Western Conference Finals or they made the finals, I wouldn't necessarily be that surprised. Because, again, they were 1 game away from beating the Thunder last year. I genuinely think that this Nuggets team is deadly. Now, again, I genuinely think if Tim Hardaway Jr. and Bruce Brown work out as 1-year deals, so if they get the best value they could have gotten from those players in terms of their individual performances, this team is going to be very, very deadly. Because now the shooting is all over the floor, right? Because then you could run a Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon. This isn't in order, by the way, but you can run Jamal, Aaron, Tim, Cam, and then Jokic. So basically you can run a 4-out scheme, and you can have Gordon always be that cutter dunker spot guy Tim Hardaway Jr. can be your catch and shoot along with Cam Johnson. So those are two defenders that have to respect those shooters that they're guarding. And then you still have a good dude that's got to respect Jamal. So at that point, you've dramatically spaced out the floor for Jokic to kind of operate. And that's where I think things can get deadly. But let me know, what do you guys think of this Nuggets team? Are they contenders? Are they pretenders? Do you guys think that these investments are their last hurrah to try and build around Jokic? Because again, a lot of these dudes are one-year deals. And I don't know, if they play good enough, they're probably going to go to some other team that will pay them multi-year deals. So again, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, this is Mr. No Hoops. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Have a beautiful rest of your day, guys. Peace out.